Yo, what's up? This is Understare, and welcome back to my channel where I like to talk about all things spooky, scary, and have a little bit of fun. Today, at the time of recording, it is Friday the 13th. Actually, it is Friday, June 13th, which is coincidentally Jason's birthday. At the same time, over in Los Angeles, they're celebrating the 45th anniversary of the series, having a big premiere party and watching a bunch of the films over there. Now, with this extraordinarily rare and coincidental date coming into effect, I thought that it would be a great idea to go through all 12 of the Friday the 13th movies and rank all of them. We've also been getting a ton of news coming out recently about A24 and Peacock putting together some kind of show based on the Friday the 13th franchise. Not a whole lot is known about what this could be about, but we've been told it's going to be a prequel in some capacity. How will that work, and what kind of ground is there even to cover before the events of the first film? Well, by the end of the video today, hopefully we'll have some kind of an idea about that. Yes, that's right, today we're going to be talking about everything Jason Voorhees. The Friday the 13th IP had been locked down in court for a very long time, and for a while there, it was seeming like we might never get another entry into the series or franchise ever again. But the court case has been settled, and A24 and Peacock are now trying to do something with that, so I'm interested to see what they're going to throw at us. We'll have to hang in tight to find out if it's going to be worth it or not. It's also worth it to note that just as of today, Halloween Horror Nights announced that we're going to be getting a Jason Universe house coming this year to the event. So I figure it is good a time as ever to dive into all of this and talk about so much Friday the 13th and Jason Voorhees lore with you guys. Friday the 13th is a series that I hold really close to my heart. Now, slashers like this are my bread and butter. It's what originally drew me into the horror genre, and it's what kept me here over the years. Lately, we've been getting so many slasher movies coming out. Most of them have been dark comedy slashers, but nonetheless, slasher movies. And most of them just cannot hold a candle to the things that these legends put out back in the day. While Michael Myers and Ghostface have seen a lot of screen time lately, Jason Voorhees has not been so lucky. But going back, there are so many films that we've seen the hockey masked killer slashing up in. So starting off at the very beginning, let's talk about the OG Friday the 13th, shall we? The first film in the Friday the 13th series takes place on today's date all the way back in 1980. Though the first film wasn't the very first slasher ever, it was definitely one of the first. And its whole first-person perspective and whodunit angle really calls back to Alfred Hitchcock and Psycho. It's not the bloodiest film, it's not the most gory, and it's definitely not the absolute most scary, but back then, this was something that was very shocking to viewers. Audiences in the 80s were not exactly used to stuff like this, and this really sent chills down a lot of people's spines. Most people know by now, but in case you didn't, Jason Voorhees is not even the main killer in this film. The ending is absolutely iconic, and we do see Jason as a young boy jumping out of the water to grab a girl and drag her in, drowning her deep beneath Camp Crystal Lake. But the majority of the film follows his scorned mother as she takes her revenge on a bunch of camp counselors that let her son drown. Jason Voorhees was not a normal child, and neither was the love that his mother had for him. This woman goes completely over the deep end and goes all the way to killing every last counselor, well, at least attempting to, in hopes to avenge her poor son's death. The Jason that we see at the end of the film doesn't even appear to be a zombie, though he does look absolutely insane. The special effects done by Tom Savini here are top notch. The makeup done by Tom Savini in this film, and all of his films really, are the building blocks of what the 80s horror craze were all built on, I swear. Part 1 is absolutely iconic. It spawned an entire franchise, but with so many other great movies that we're going to be talking about here, I'm going to have to slot this one right at number 4. There's just too much more heat to come. We haven't even really gotten to Jason yet. But moving on to part 2, we're going to change that. This is where Jason comes into the fray. This film introduces Jason, and we begin developing the identity of the character that we all know and love. Though he doesn't quite have the hockey mask yet, he does have this cool little baghead mask that he wears throughout the film. It's different than what we're used to, and it's very primitive. I kind of like the take personally. And in this film, Jason appears to be very alive still. This isn't the zombie Jason that we're also used to just yet. One of the most important facts about Friday Part 2 is that this is where the lore of Pamela and the whole sweater thing comes into play. The final girl in this film puts on Jason's dead mother's sweater in an attempt to confuse him. It works, and they're almost able to get the upper hand on him, but when he sees his mother's severed head sitting on an altar in his weird little killer shack, it all kinda snaps him back into place. At the end of the film, they're able to hit Jason with a machete in his shoulder and think that that would take him out, but as we know, Jason is no normal person and just busts through the windows in a very iconic shot with no mask on at the end. And I mean, man, look at that mug. We're gonna have to do something about that thing in the next one. Friday the 13th Part 2 is one that I am personally very fond of. I love Baghead Jason, and I go back to watch this one every now and then. With all that said, I'm gonna slot this thing right in number 3. Friday Part 3 is the one where Jason Jason finally gets his mask. This is where pieces start clicking into place, and we're starting to really get there with Jason. This is starting to become the Jason Voorhees that everybody sees all over the place. This film follows the same basic formula that most of the Friday the 13th films follow. A group of camp counselors come out there not knowing that Jason Voorhees is lurking out in the woods, and he one by one kills them all off. The film also ends with Jason once again seemingly being defeated, this time taking an axe to the dome, which would probably do it for most people. Obviously not for Jason though. And the movie ends with a very interesting dream sequence where the final girl is attacked by a visage of Pam Voorhees, hopping out of the water and grabbing her, pulling her under, very similar to how the baby Jason did in the very first movie. A nice little touch. This film is a lot of fun. It definitely sets out the basic formula that we're going to be following throughout the rest of these movies, and that the whole very tired camp slasher thing is all originally spawned from. But because of that very fact, a lot of these other movies that we're talking about moving forward add a lot of things to that formula, where this one is just very bare bones with it. It causes it to kind of get lost in the mix, you know what I mean? For that very reason, I'm going to slot this movie at a very modest number 6. Friday the 13th Part 4 was originally billed as the final chapter. With this being the 4th film in the series, they really thought that there wasn't too much that they could do from here. They thought that it was time to put Jason truly to an end, and they sought out to find the best way to do that. Hilariously enough, they choose to do that by repeating almost exactly what happens in the last movie. You'd think that if they wanted Jason to be dead, they would have just left him dead, but you know what? Let's prove that he wasn't all the way there, bring him back to Camp Crystal Lake, and finish him off, shall we? The film begins with Jason as he escapes a morgue and then returns to the camp to kill more teenagers one by one. In this movie, we're finally introduced to Jason's arch nemesis, and he's portrayed by a young Corey Feldman. The name Tommy Jarvis is one that we're going to come to know very well by the end of this video, and Part 4 serves as the first chapter in their long-standing rivalry here. The two bear some sort of strange connection, and there's a little bit of parallels between the two characters, where Tommy is not very well adjusted, to be honest. By the end of the film, you got him shaving his head and running around like a crazy person, trying to actually imitate Jason in an attempt to confuse him. This whole scheme does end up paying off, as they're able to hit Jason in the head with his own machete. And knowing that that didn't exactly finish him off in the last film, Tommy Jarvis decides to go to town on this guy, chopping him to bits, making sure that Jason is down for the count. But is he really though? Obviously not. Friday the 13th Part 4 final chapter is one of my favorites. This is the last time that we'll be seeing Jason in his truly human form, or well, whatever that means exactly. Next time we'll be seeing Jason, we're going to be moving into the full supernatural zombie arc of that whole thing. But Part 4 is truly the antithesis of human Jason just being a menace. He's a deranged, crazy, hideously disfigured man running around in the woods that seems to be so endurant. I mean, if we're not saying that he's already undead here, then I don't exactly know how he took an axe to the head in the last one, but man, he really did take it. I love the dichotomy of Jason and Tommy Jarvis. I think that it's really cool, and I'm really excited that we're going to be exploring that more in these next few films that we're going to be talking about. For those reasons, I'm putting Final Chapter at number 2 on my rankings. So these first 4 films show us a Jason that, believe it or not, is a lot more grounded and down to earth than the rest of the series that we're going to explore here. We're getting all of our major classic slasher vibes from these first 4 films. Though of course it's only as grounded and realistic as it can be, with him getting sliced in the shoulder and taking multiple blows to the head over the course of these few films. But regardless, he is dead now, isn't he? All those blows built up and paid off over time in the long run. I assure you, he is actually dead here for the very first time, but we will be seeing more of him nonetheless. Obviously, there's so many more movies that we're about to discuss. From here on out though, is when Friday the 13th as a series decided to get a little bit more experimental with the formula. They already decided that the thing was tired enough to try to put it to bed, and then when the money came calling, they decided to answer the phone. They did decide to have their fun while doing it, however, and we got a lot of very interesting films here to talk about. So like I said, next time we'll be picking up with Jason, he's gonna be in a whole new zombie form, but that's not in this film. No, actually, in this film, Jason's not present at all. In my opinion, this is kind of the Halloween 3 Season of the Witch of the whole Friday the 13th saga. Though we don't have Jason, luckily we do have Tommy Jarvis, and we're picking up with him at the Pine Way halfway house. That's right, not even our normal Camp Crystal Lake setting. This film serves as Tommy vs. Jason Part 2. Well, sort of. In this film, a paramedic whose son had died in the previous movie completely loses his mind and decides to dress up and roleplay as Jason, killing a bunch of people because he just completely loses it. Dude's lost his marbles, I don't know what to tell you. The movie's halfway decent, and it's got some good kills in it. I just can't shake the fact that this whole thing doesn't actually have Jason Voorhees in it. It's a bummer to me that Part 2 in the saga between Tommy Jarvis and Jason doesn't even have Jason. That's like part of the whole point, you know what I mean? The film even ends with this super bizarre scene of Tommy Jarvis now putting on the mask as if he's now been possessed by Jason Voorhees, echoing themes of yet another Halloween movie that didn't really go over too well. This whole thing is just a modge podge of ideas thrown at a board that I personally did not like, and I'm glad did not stick. We'll be revisiting some of these themes loosely later in the series, but this one just does not hit for me. With all these movies in the Friday the 13th series, I'm surprised how many of them I absolutely adore. From numbers 1 to 10 on this list, there's something I can find that I really like in all of these movies. But this one right here, Friday Part 5, this one's gonna have to go in the number 11 slot for me. I can still find things to enjoy in it, and I'll still watch it on a really rainy day, but I mean, come on, there's better stuff out there in the series. And speaking of better things out there in the series, now we are talking about Part 6, Jason Lives. Jason Lives really takes a risk and tries to reinvent the series. Part 5 really did not go over well with general audiences, and they thought that it's time to change things up, you know? This film begins with Jason being resurrected by accidentally being struck by lightning. From here, he rises as a supernatural zombie Jason, capable of teleporting, bearing unimaginable strength, and now more so than ever, seemingly unkillable. This film is a lot of fun, and there's a lot of comedy inserted in it as well. There's one scene where this guy gets killed by getting slammed up against a tree, and it leaves a little smiley face imprinted on it. I mean, come on, we're obviously not taking things too seriously this time around. This is the kind of slasher camp that I absolutely love. And no, I don't mean camp like being at camp, I mean camp like campy movie. You know what? This film also serves as Tommy Jarvis vs. Jason Part 3, their final showdown. At the end of the movie, Tommy has to come to terms with the fact that he cannot kill Jason. He's just an unkillable monster. Instead, he covers him in chains and sinks him down to the very bottom of Camp Crystal Lake. Here, imprisoned exactly where he initially drowned all those years ago, Jason would not be able to escape and cause any more harm. This film is fantastic, and it's got everything in it that I personally love about the Friday the 13th series. If I'm showing one of these movies to somebody that's never seen one of them before, this is my go-to, honestly. Friday the 13th Part 6, Jason Lives is my number 1 in the whole series. I'm putting that on everything. Moving on to Part 7, we've got The New Blood. This is a strange one that not a lot of people talk about or really know about, but the ones who do know about it refer to this as the Jason Voorhees versus Fake Carrie movie. At the beginning of the film, a psychic girl with telekinetic abilities accidentally wakes up Jason Voorhees from the bottom of the lake, freeing him from the chains that Tommy put him in. He makes his way to the surface, and we get another classic Friday the 13th rundown of him tearing through teenagers. And at the end of the film, we even get another really cool look at zombie Jason. But a lot about this whole thing really falls flat for me. There's a few standout moments, but the majority of the film just doesn't really have a lot to really enjoy about it. It's a pretty boring one if you ask me. Well, maybe I should hedge that statement, because the end of the movie does have her resurrecting the spirit of her drowned and deceased father to pop up out of the lake like some sort of a water spirit, dragging Jason to the bottom, imprisoning him back into his chains, and having him at the bottom of Camp Crystal Lake. I mean, that is pretty insane, I can't lie. But the majority of the film just kind of falls flat compared to some of the other entries that we've had on this list, and some of the ones that are to come, obviously. This isn't a movie that I hold disdain for, but it's definitely one close to the bottom of my rankings. I unfortunately have to put Friday the 13th, The New Blood at number 10. Moving on to another very fun one, Friday the 13th Part 8 is Jason Takes Manhattan. This film was a really fun concept. I mean, we're taking Jason out of Camp Crystal Lake and we're putting him in a very different setting than one that we're used to. It won't be the last time that we do this, but I'm really glad that we took the leap here. The whole thing is just a really cool concept. It's really fun to see Jason in these different environments. Now, admittedly, and one of the things that a lot of people like to bring up about this film is that most of it takes place on a boat on the way to New York. A lot of the film is just him being transported there and killing people aboard that ship. But man, when he does make it to the big city, we got a lot of very iconic scenes here. I mean, if it wasn't for this film, we wouldn't have these awesome clips of Jason kicking over a stereo or boxing it out on the rooftops with a New Yorker. There's a lot here that is straight up gold. This movie is definitely worth a watch, and there's a lot of goofy stuff going on. The film ends with a final girl getting the upper hand over on Jason and dumping a whole tank of toxic sludge onto him. This straight up melts him, and we get some really cool shots of him just turning into goo. I don't know about you guys, but I'm sure that this has to be the last that we've seen of Jason, right? I mean, he's been melted into goo in New York City. How is he gonna get back to Camp Crystal Lake from that? No, there are 4 other films we gotta talk about here. That's definitely not the last we'll see see of him. Jason Takes Manhattan is a lot of fun. This is another one that I have to recommend to a lot of people because it's just so outrageous, honestly. For me personally, Friday Part 8 is going in the number 7 slot. Yeah, so contrasting greatly to those first 4 films, these things took the franchise into all kinds of different wild directions here, testing out different ways that they could play with this formula. I mean, it's just teenagers at summer camp, right? There's only so much you can do with that. Unless, of course, you add in a fake hockey mask wearing wannabe, a comedic zombie Jason versus some kind of fake Carrie telekinetic woman. Oh, and of course, the masked menace in the Big Apple tearing it up in New York. That is bonkers, man. See, this is one of the reasons why I love Friday the 13th. They really just have fun with it. They find so many different ways to do different things and put Jason in all these crazy predicaments that really just doesn't make it feel tired, you know? There's a little bit of something to enjoy in every single one of these movies. They don't really fall too similar to each other like a lot of these other slasher franchises do. I think that's one of the major reasons why there are so many entries here, why this has gone on for so long, and why we're dying for it to come back at this point. They just have so much fun with it. And trust, we are only getting started. We've got 4 more films to talk about, and these ones also try out some interesting things. Now dropping the Friday the 13th moniker altogether, Jason Goes to Hell, the final Friday, is one that I personally think is absolutely insane. This is another one of those Friday films that drastically departs from the formula. The film begins with the FBI and SWAT teams absolutely pulling up and raiding Jason's little killer shack. They blow him to bits with rocket launchers and grenades, and then take his body into a morgue where a coroner eats his heart and then gets possessed by Jason's spirit. That is the beginning setup for this movie. It is absolutely outrageous. Now, this whole thing could be pretty cool, but it's another one of those films where Jason isn't exactly the main character here. I mean, he more so is than he was in Part 5. We actually do have the spirit of Jason moving these people, but it's just him possessing a bunch of people. And not even just spiritually. He's like a weird slug thing that crawls around in and out and possesses people by crawling through them. It's so bizarre, man. They took some risks here, I gotta give it to them there. I mean, there's 9 movies at this point. They had to try something out, but this absolutely misses for me. They even try to tie some weird stuff about a magical dagger and needing to return to the Voorhees house at the end of this movie. It's just, it doesn't need to happen, and it's just so weird, man. The only really redeemable thing about this movie is that at the very end, the very final shot, we see Jason's mask laying in a pile of dirt, and then Freddy's glove permeates through the earth and grabs it, pulling it down to hell, supposedly. This is obviously a little setup for Freddy vs. Jason that we'll be talking about in a minute here, but this movie as a whole just did not do it for me. For these reasons, I'm unfortunately gonna have to put this in the very last spot at the bottom of my list. Hilariously enough, the franchise would take another risk for their next film, but this one returning a little bit more to their formula. Here they would give us Jason X, and this one is absolutely the most fun Friday the 13th movie. This is the Friday the 13th to turn on at the function. This is one you can put on at the TV when you're having fun with some friends, and everybody's gonna get a laugh. We've got some great kills, and we've got some iconic moments throughout this thing, with the cryo face smash, some really funny clips of Jason in like virtual reality simulations, and we even get uber robot Jason at the end of the thing. The whole thing is capped off with a really funny visual of Jason being blown out into space, and with all the enjoyment that I get out of this thing, I'm slotting Jason X at number 5. With only 2 more movies left to talk about, this next one is the last one that could technically be placed into the canon of this whole thing. Here we're talking about Freddy vs. Jason. Freddy vs. Jason is a really interesting one. It was a really fun idea, and it's a cool crossover between the two. In the film, Freddy isn't exactly at full power, and in order to get there, he needs to make people afraid of him again. In order to do this, he drags Jason out of hell and sends him out to kill people in order to make them afraid of the old killers once again. This plan mostly works, and the whole movie is pretty good. You get a lot of good kills, and the showdown between the 2 legends at the end is really, really cool. There's a lot of great moments, they explore a lot of cool environments between the 2 franchises, and if you're a fan of both, then definitely check this thing out. The only gripe that I have with it is that they could have treated Jason with a little bit more care as far as his lore and character goes. They kinda disrespect his character a little bit when they show that he's absolutely terrified of water and make him cry like a little baby. I mean, the dude did presumably drown as a little kid, but we know that to have not actually happened by now. The boy survived in the lake like some kind of little creature of the Black Lagoon baby and emerged over time, becoming the monster that he was. The man spent his entire life around water. This is just absolutely ridiculous. There is a lot of debate that goes over at the end, because Jason does decapitate Freddy and walk off with his head, but the final shot of the movie zooms in on that head to show Freddy winking at the camera, proving that the whole thing could just be a dream inside of Jason's head. Freddy vs. Jason is a really fun time. It's not one of my favorites of the whole series, but it's one that I definitely think is worth the watch, especially if you're a fan of both franchises. For those reasons, I'm putting Freddy vs. Jason at number 9 on my list. Last up in our little marathon here, we're going to be talking about the Friday the 13th remake. This is a film that I thought was really cool, and it was done with a lot of intention. It does kind of get lost in the sauce here with all of the nudity. There's an egregious amount of screen time that is taken up with these kids getting busy, but the stuff that does show Jason is really, really cool. This is a violent and scary Jason. The kills are brutal and vicious, and I really like how they find a way to condense the first 3 films into a little exposition here. They touch on all the major parts of the lore, and we get a little bit of time with Pamela at the beginning. We see Jason witness her death. We get some shots of Baghead Jason going to town on some kids, and by the end of the film, we've got the Jason Voorhees in a hockey mask getting tricked by his mother's sweater. It really does just tick all of the boxes. If you're a Friday the 13th fan trying to show this to a friend that just can't really get into the 80s stuff because it's too vintage, this is the movie that I would recommend showing to them. It's a great modernized version of all of the major Friday the 13th themes. With all of that said, and rounding off the list, I'm putting the remake at number 8. Oh man, I truly feel like I just personally gave birth to Jason Voorhees after going through all of that. That was a lot. I hope you guys enjoyed our little marathon that we had here. What is your favorite Friday the 13th movie? How would your rankings differ from mine here? I know that taste is subjective. Everybody is going to have their own opinions here, and I know that you're going to have some strong ones about some of the things that I listed. That's fine. Let me have it in the comments. Tell me how it is. So with everything that we talked about here today, what do you think that A24 could be going for with their new series that they're booting up around Jason? It's going to be streaming on Peacock, and we know that it's going to be some sort of a prequel, but what is it going to be about? What could they possibly cover here? We all know now that Jason was just a normal, regular boy that was a little bit disfigured, well, a lot of it disfigured, and then he drowned and his mom went crazy, killed a bunch of people. He saw his mom get killed, and then he went crazy himself. So where in that mix does a prequel really feel warranted to you guys? I don't know what kind of ground they could possibly cover with this. Jason wasn't like a killer before he died. I mean, at least not that we know of. They could retcon that and do something interesting there, I guess. But if it's a prequel, will the hockey mask even be involved? Could this be some kind of like non-canon take on him surviving out in the woods in between the first and second film? Maybe he finds a hockey mask in there just so that they can make it look like him. I don't know. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments down below. Definitely willing to host a discussion about this. There's so much to talk about, there's so much that they could do, and I love theorizing and speculating here with you guys on the channel. I had a lot of fun going through all these movies today and talking about them with you. Friday the 13th is one of my favorite horror franchise, and this was a great excuse to go over it all with you guys today. But how'd you guys like my video? If you enjoyed it today, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more content just like this. And if you really enjoyed it, be sure to send it over to a friend you think might like it too. I'm still pretty new over here on YouTube, but I've got hours of awesome horror content over on my channel for you guys to browse through. Go over there and check it out. You'll probably find some other things you like. I've been Elder's Terror. Whether your day's been going good or bad today, I hope it gets better.